So I have owned my F30 340i for about 4-ish months now, and I gotta say, there are quite a few things that I absolutely love about this vehicle, and there's so many reasons why I bought it. But today, I wanted to talk about 10 things that I absolutely love about the F30 chassis. This list is not gonna be in any particular order. It's really just in the order that I came up with it in. So let's start right away with the ambient lighting. Now, you can't see too much right now because we're in the daytime, but the ambient lighting is amazing in this car, especially at night when I'm driving. It's really the only time you're ever gonna see it. But it's this red light, it's underneath the door cards, it looks amazing. I do wish it was under the dash, but it's underneath the radio controls and the door panels, and it just looks amazing when you're driving at night. I know it's not the color changing ambient lighting that you get on the G20 or the G35 series, but you do have that red light. I think it is the best color choice they could have picked because it matches the gauge cluster, it matches the climate controls, it matches the screens when you're driving at night, which if you turn it off, it just makes for even more of a vibe. And if you don't want red, you can actually change it to white, you can dim it, or you can just turn it off. So it's super customizable and probably one of my favorite things about nighttime driving in the F30. We're gonna switch gears, literally, because we're gonna talk about the B58 inline 6 and the ZF 8-speed automatic. This is probably one of the smoothest automatic transmissions. You've probably heard that. It's an incredibly smooth transmission, and even though it's not a manual, a lot of people prefer it over the manual because of how smooth it is. And then you have that paired with the B58, which I'm not planning on tuning or anything, but the 320 horsepower is honestly more than enough if you're mostly doing in-town driving. As a matter of fact, if you're doing any in-town driving, I almost recommend going for the smaller 4-cylinder model, the B46 it is in the US, or B48 in Europe. But I chose the B58 because I love to do a lot of highway driving. Acceleration is pretty quick off the line, and the transmission handles everything so smooth. You can even put it in sport, and all of a sudden the shifts become way quicker, and it really changes the dynamics of how the car drives. So whether you're going for a really comfy cruise, or you really want to take it on some canyon back roads, this car can really do both. And that brings me on to an honorable mention, which I didn't put on my list, but I figured I might as well talk about it. The sport modes. I'm looking down at the buttons right here. You obviously have the Sport and Sport Plus in the F30. You also have Eco Pro, but nobody really uses it unless you're really trying to save on gas, I suppose. But having sport mode, it makes the steering feel a little bit heavier. It's still pretty light, but it's nice to have that feeling, and then also makes the pedal feel a little more responsive. You can customize it to be the engine and transmission, the steering and chassis, or both if you want. It's really nice that you can customize it because I don't like my engine always revving super high. I sometimes just like the feeling of being fast and dynamic. So all in all, the B58 and the ZF8 combination, absolutely amazing. In my opinion, it's pretty hard to top. Next thing is actually a really cool, unique BMW feature, the separate vent dial that lives in the top right here. So you can change it between cold or hot. The nice thing about it is no matter what temperature settings you have your automatic climate control set to, no matter what temperature you have it set to, period, this will change the temperature in the vent. So for example, if I'm blasting the heat in the car, maybe it's a colder day, but I don't want it to get super stuffy, I can have just these top vents blow colder air into my face. And the same goes for the back as well, which kind of almost makes it its own zone of climate control if you think that way. Or you can have it blow heat when the rest of the temperature is blowing AC. It's really nice that you can customize that because personally, I don't like my face getting super stuffy when I have the heat blasting in my car. This is probably the first and possibly only call I'll ever have with this, and I really appreciate that feature. Incredibly underrated. Next thing is going to be a winter-centric feature, the heated steering wheel. Now, if you have your car equipped with the heated steering wheel, you'll know that, first of all, you can't see where the light is. It's no big deal, but the heated steering wheel, I know that most cars have heated steering wheels nowadays, but if you optioned your F30 or if you option your F30 with the heated steering wheel, it makes such a difference when you're driving in the wintertime. Personally, I like to start my car before I leave for work or something like that, typically in the mornings when it's sub 30 degrees. Coming into a heated steering wheel, which by the way, if you don't start your car early, it heats up within like 3 to 5 minutes. It's pretty quick. It's really a game changer. Like if you've never had a car with a heated steering wheel and you live in a wintry climate, get a car with a heated steering wheel. You will never want to go back. So that is a great feature that I am super glad that I found an F30 with. The next thing is going to be the adjustable bolsters and thigh support. Now, thigh support's pretty common. My mom's Audi A4 has the adjustable thigh support. That has been done. It's been seen. But what hasn't been seen a whole lot is the adjustable bolster support. It's a little button on the side of the seat, and you can adjust it to be really tight. You can have it grip your back, or you can have it be really loose and comfortable. I've seen a few Mercedes-Benzes do this. I've seen some other older BMWs do this. But on a car that's about $35,000, and one that honestly, if you get a 4-cylinder, you can find in the low 20s. Having that feature is honestly a game changer. Unfortunately, the 320s did not come with that option, but if you get the 328, the 330 and higher, they did have that option. And so it's super nice. And it's back to my thing I was saying with whether or not you want to be super comfortable or you want to drive them like really dynamic, having the tighter bolsters definitely makes that nicer. Now, it's not the dynamic ones, it's not the ones that move on their own. You do have to set it yourself, but still, it's fantastic, and I'm super glad that my car has this feature because even the newer 3 Series don't even have them anymore. That's absolutely insane to me. But yeah, I love the bolster support. The next thing is going to be the shortcut buttons on the iDrive. So on this car right above the CD player, you have all of the shortcut buttons. You have 8 different shortcut buttons. You can hover over them with your finger. They're actually touch sensitive, and you can see what you have each of those things set to. You can have obviously radio presets. That's where the feature originated from. But personally, I don't listen to the radio. I have CarPlay all the time. So it's like, oh yeah, I can just have it set to whatever menu I want. So for example, the power button doesn't turn off the screen, so I have that a shortcut button. I have the sport display as a shortcut button. I have my headlight settings a shortcut button, and a bunch of other things too. So if I want to easily get to a menu, like for example, my audio, adjusting the bass and the treble, I have a button for that too. So you can set this to pretty much anything you want in the menu. Some things it doesn't let you do, but for the most part, you go to the menu and you don't click in the menu, but you hover over the menu you want, press and hold the button, and boom, the preset is set. And honestly, that is probably one of the best things you can do, especially for limiting distraction while driving. So BMW, props to you. And that leads me right on to the iDrive system in general. So this is a 2017. In 2018, they actually introduced a touchscreen to these vehicles, which unfortunately mine doesn't have, but I gotta say, I am pretty fortunate to not have a touchscreen because I'm looking at it right now. There is literally no fingerprints on the screen at all. You control it with just the dial that not only is much closer to you than the screen, but it's also super ergonomic. You just rest your arm on the armrest and you basically just use the dial. It's super simple, and even in Apple CarPlay, I think it works for the most part really well. Only thing I wish I had was just a physical pause button, but all the other iDrive buttons that surround the dial are also just as useful. I happen to use the back and the menu buttons most frequently, especially in Apple CarPlay. They really come in handy, and you can even tilt the iDrive dial. It can go back and forth, and it really is just a great system. It's very ergonomic, and it definitely minimizes driver distraction. So iDrive really, it needs to come back to this. We need to stop with the all touchscreen systems, hiding all the climate controls in the screen, bring back just using the dial, maybe a touchscreen for a couple things like on the 2018s, but this really is the best way to do it. Not having any fingerprints on the screen is a massive W. The next thing I want to talk about is the look and feel of the M Sport steering wheel. I'm not talking about steering feel, that's going to be in another video, but in this, the leather-wrapped M Sport steering wheel probably has the perfect thickness in my opinion. The newer ones are just a little too thick. This one, for my hands, is absolutely perfect. I can wrap my hands around the back. It's got these little 9-3 grips right here that bump out just perfectly. It's even got these little ridges on the back. I'm pretty sure you can see right there, the little tiny ridges that go on the back. It definitely increases grip ever so slightly. Now the leather gets worn pretty fast, and I'm considering reupholstering the leather on the steering wheel. But other than that, the buttons are all super easy to get to. You don't have to stretch your thumbs out too much. The volume dials are exactly where you want them. You can change your mode of radio. You got your voice connection. You have your cruise controls right here, and a couple blanks where either the adaptive cruise controls live, which almost no cars in the States actually came with on the F30s, or the M1 and M2 buttons, which were on the M cars. And it's actually a pretty popular mod on these as well. You can actually use these buttons to adjust your driving modes instead of down there, which again, minimizes distraction. And you even have these little paddle shifters, which personally, it's the 8-speed ZF. I don't use the paddle shifters that often, but it is kind of fun just to row through the gears sometimes on your own, even though it automatically reverts back. So it's not a DCT, but the paddle shifters are great. Overall, my favorite part about it though is having that grip and the thickness. The thickness is absolutely perfect. The round horn really is the peak of BMW steering wheel design. The next thing is going to be the parking cameras. Now on the F30, there was an option called side and top view cameras. That option is actually not super common on the F30s, believe it or not, but my car does have it. There's these two little buttons that live right underneath the driving mode buttons. There's a camera button and there's a park assist button. Now, believe it or not, the park assist button actually gives you more camera views than the camera button itself. The camera button itself only uses the two little cameras that are mounted on the front bumper. No, there's no front camera actually. There's one there are ones on each side just beyond the wheel arches, and those actually allow you to see how far back in the parking space you are. Those are not nearly as useful though as the surround view cameras. They're side and top view cameras because again, there's no front view. It's not nearly as sophisticated as what they have in the G30 or the G20, but you press that and then that allows you to alternate between your backup camera view and also your 360-degree camera. I really wish it showed them on screen side by side at the same time, but for me, I pretty much never have an issue centering myself in a parking space anymore. That combined with the auto-tilting mirror on the passenger side, or whatever side that you don't have the mirror button selected, automatically adjusts for you, so it makes it an absolute breeze to park. Not an option that you necessarily need, but it's kind of just a cool thing to have just in case. And lastly, one of the coolest features on the F30 that I didn't even really think about until a few days before I got my own car was the heads-up display. Now the heads-up display is just above, obviously, the gauge cluster, and it has your digital speedo, it has the speed limit, and it even throws any alerts that are really important in there. So for example, the outside temperature, your TPMS light that shows up in there. And so I find myself barely actually looking at the gauge cluster. I did code the digital speedometer into the gauge cluster, but it's almost pointless because I have a giant one that lives right there. It's always in my sight, and I basically always know that I'm abiding the speed limit. It's a really great feature, and it's probably something I'll want on every other car I own from now on. However, sometimes I might not always want it, and so I can just turn it off if I want. Also, if I'm wearing sunglasses, it does fade it out just a little bit, so at that point, I'll use the gauge cluster. But yeah, if you ever drive a car with a heads-up display, it is one of the coolest things you can have on a car. And so those are the 10 things that I absolutely love about the BMW F30 chassis. Things that definitely influenced my decision to buy one for myself. Are there some things that I wish this car had, like ventilated seats? Absolutely. And so with that, I'm going to be making a couple more videos, such as things I don't like about the F30 and things that I would change, and maybe things I've already changed about the F30, possibly using coding. So be sure to stay tuned for that because I've got a lot of really cool videos coming on this F30. I'm kind of in a frozen state right now during the winter. Over the summer, I'm hoping to do a couple more upgrades to this vehicle. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But for now, I figured I'd talk about the things that I love about the F30 as it is. It's a great deal as a vehicle. You can get it in so many different formats. You don't even need a sedan. You can get a wagon. You can get a hardtop cabrio, which look beautiful in the Astoral Blue, by the way. You can also get a coupe, you can get a Gran Turismo, even though I know most people don't like that, or you can get the beautiful Gran Coupe. So many different choices, so many different engines. The B58's the best of the non-M cars, but sorry about the wind there, oh my gosh. But anyway, the F30 is a fantastic chassis no matter which way you have it. And so yeah, those are just a few of the things that I absolutely love about the BMW F30. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you check out some more of my F30 related content, maybe some of my other video reviews if you're interested in other kinds of cars. But anyway, no matter what kind of car you have, no matter what type of vehicle you want, no matter what kind of engine you want, I hope you guys drive safe regardless. Thank you for staying tuned on my things that I love about the F30, and thank you so much for watching.